Have your attention, please. I welcome you all to this meeting of the Cardinia Shire Council and declare the meeting open. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live over the internet on Council's website. I'll open with a prayer. Almighty God, we humbly request that you bestow your blessings upon this council, direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and to the betterment of the peoples of Cardinia Shire. Amen. We also have our traditional landowners' acknowledgement, and the Cardinia Shire Council respectfully acknowledges that we're on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Mr Evans, do we have any apologies?
No, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the minutes of the meetings as listed? Councillor Graham Moore, seconded Councillor Letitia Wilmot. All those in favour? Declared carried. Declarations of interest. Councillors, do I have any declarations of interest? If not, we will move on. Ordinary business. The Council conducts its meetings according to a consent agenda. Councillors have advised of the matters for consideration this evening that they wish to discuss or debate. The remaining items will be adopted without discussion. The items withdrawn for the discussion for this evening are item number 1, the lease of 610 Main Street, Pakenham, and it's been withdrawn by Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the following alternate motion, that Council defer a decision on the lease of 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham. Prior to the lease coming back to councillors for further consideration, officers to prepare a detailed report of the estimated annual cost to council to maintain the buildings and facilities at 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham for the life of the 50-year lease. Officers prepare a detailed report of all the proposed social housing projects on council-owned land. The report should include information such as land valuations, detailed costs to council, and that a strategic policy document be presented to council to help guide council when making decisions of social housing on council-owned land. I've moved so.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Carol Ryan. Back to the mover. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Ryan, for seconding my alternate motion. Don't get me wrong, I congratulate Council's intention to provide social community housing for those in need. We know there is a massive gap and long waiting lists for people needing that type of housing. I congratulate Council in our efforts and the officers involved. But I'm deferring this motion for really clear reasons, to get more information. There is a page and a half report before us, and as councillors, we're making a decision on a page and a half report. Last week at a council briefing, I requested further information in relation to the financial impacts on this decision. A verbal conversation was had in briefing today. I have not received any written information on the financial impact of this lease over 50 years. I legitimately asked for that information. That information did not come, and the only information I got today, a councillor's got today, was a verbal, no figures, just a conversation about that. I think that's unacceptable. As councillors, we're decision makers. We are the holders of ratepayers' money, and we are making a decision over 50 years. And that it is important that we get this information. So I'm simply asking for a deferral until that full information comes to councillors in relation to how much that will cost council, mainly around the maintenance of these units. Council is not building these units. If council had was building these units, we could have a say of the sort of build. We're not. So I'm seeking a deferral on that basis. Also, we are proposing a number of these sort of projects on council-owned land, quite significant valued council-owned land, and I'm asking for a full report detailing that. Also, I understand that a strategic document, policy document, is going to be presented to council in the coming weeks about this same issue. And I just cannot make a decision tonight when we've got this relevant policy that will come before us in the coming weeks. I just can't comprehend why we would make a decision tonight. So, councillors, I request your support. I reiterate, I congratulate council's intention here. We are trying to make a difference for those people in need, but we, as councillors, need to be financially responsible for ratepayers' monies over the next 50 years, and I'm seeking that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm in support of Councillor Owen's motion in the lease of 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham. I also have requested a report on the information. Again, yes, 1 page, 2 pages is not really enough information for me to assess in where I see things. Again, I'm all for this. I think there is a need for it in our community. We're out there as a council to try and assist people that are down on their luck and need those services in place. It's more about the fact that a bit more information with the officers preparing a detailed report to estimate the annual cost of council and what will be responsible for in ongoing upkeep of gardens, plus structural and capital maintenance over 50 years. That's a long time. And we're only requesting it simply because we are accountable for what goes on within council, and we're accountable for ratepayers' input as well, and to all our other residents. So under support of the motion, I do need clarification of report under the financial and resource implications of council's responsibility for the ongoing upkeep of the gardens and structural maintenance, and what this commitment looks like over 50 years. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Ryan, do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting this amended motion tonight. I guess I was a little bit disappointed and shocked to see the alternate motion appear in my inbox today. We talk about the 1 to 2 pages of a report. This has been on the council agenda now for about 12 months. We've been two years in general, the overall project. So I feel that we have been briefed along the way. And I can't help but to feel this is a little bit of an economic game of cat and mouse when it comes to the lives of vulnerable people. To me, the answer is quite simple. Do we support social housing or not? That's the question. And for the public record, as long as it's well planned, as long as it is of high quality, I do support it. If we accept that we support it, we have to accept there's a small financial cost associated with maintaining the perimeter of the building, mainly mowing the grass at an estimated cost of $400 per year. Yes, I admit a part of the perimeter does involve the gutter. The gutters, if there was to be a roof tile that would crack, fixing a front door or a back door or a roof, but over a 50-year lifespan of this lease, that is quite a small amount of money. And I can assure people that it's a minuscule amount of money compared to the potential social ramifications of allowing vulnerable people to fall through the gaps. This project, as I said, has been spoken about for quite a significant period of time. So my question is, why has the hurdle happened today when it hit our inbox this afternoon? I believe personally that as councillors we have all the information that we need to make this decision right now, tonight. And I won't be sitting back tonight delaying vital infrastructure, even if it is only for a month or so, when we have members of the community who are sitting vulnerable and are in need. I'd like to give a bit of a snapshot as well about some of the economic benefits to what this project will give to our community. This was research conducted by the Housing Group, which will be managing the facility. So every $1 that is invested into social housing in our community has an $11 return. A 1 to 11 ratio is absolutely massive. They say the tenants who have taken tenancy in their developments, 63% of them, they say, have a social capital of a total of $9 million. 70% of people feel happier and more confident. 67% of people feel like they're in better physical health than before. And as far as I'm concerned, here we are now sitting back debating a measly $400 per year, plus or minus the repair of a roof, back door, replacing a few tiles on a roof. That's how I see it. It's a very small amount of money when we're looking at the care of the community, and we need to start looking at social capital as an economic measure when we're delivering our budgets. It's not all just about the bottom line and a few $100s here, a few $1,000s here. It is about the mop-up cost to our community if we are not responsive to our community's needs. So that's where I'll be coming from. I don't support this motion tonight, but once again, I'm very interested to hear rest of councillors' thoughts on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for it? I've got Councillor Moore over here. Thank you, Councillor Graham Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Schilling, for your view on this. I'll be supporting the motion put up by Councillor Brett Owen this evening, only because we're talking about we're not against the idea, the concept. Yes, it's been around for 2 years. I know that. I've been there that long, and yes, we understand. And I think, as a group of councillors here, we do support this project. I think it's the location, I think, is where the problem is. And I honestly think, to be transparent, my opinion, it would be nice to. It's been very quick. This item has come through very, very fast. I know the project has been there for 2 years, but the actual location has been brought up pretty quickly up to speed. And so I would really honestly like to see a little bit more information of how we're going to deliver this to our community and have it shown to our community that we are being proactive and heading in the right direction. I really honestly think we owe it to the community to delay this for just a short while. It's not going to be the end of the earth. And so I think, in all respects to you, Councillor, I know where you come from, and I accept the challenge of the idea is great. But I just think, to be transparent, I'd like to see a little bit more information. It's not going to hurt this time to delay it for a short amount of time. That's my opinion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I've got another speaker, Councillor Jodie Owen, and then I've got Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I also will not be supporting this motion. Yes, you may say it was a page and a half, but I've taken some notes from our meeting just this afternoon where our CEO went in depth into what this all comes to. So as Councillor Schilling said, it's $400 per year for garden maintenance. The structure, actual building outside, tiled roof and gutter and downpipes, they could be repaired by us but not seen until at least 15 years, as you would do with your own home. Anything interior, hot water service and anything else on the property that needs repair comes under ways. It doesn't come to council. The other thing that residents and some of these council are missing is there is $2.3 million being put in to build this. $2.3 million. Yes, we're leasing the land, but at the end of the lease, council owns the building. So I'll repeat that really slow. $400 uptake a year, $2.3 million put in by a foundation to build the facility. So at the end of the day, we are doing maintenance outside when required. And I don't know about you guys, but tiles on roofs don't always come off. So it's not like it's going to be a couple of thousand every year to replace a tile. I'm happy with the facts I've got via email, also in personal briefings, and as has been said, this is not something new. We have been discussing Main Street and other developments for 2 years. Why is Main Street just as good? These people, we want them working. We want them back into the community. Putting housing there, there's bus lines, there's My Place, there's so many services that people trying to get back on their feet need. And all I'd say is, I hope one day I don't need one of these services, because everybody at some point can have something occur where your life goes from being fantastic to being out on your feet. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jodie Owen. Councillor Ray Brown, I believe you had contribution. Thank you.
I must admit, I'm a little confused because my understanding was that the motion was to not go ahead with this. It was just to seek some information on what the upkeep was going to be and what other properties that we're managing is going to be. So it's a simple request. I can't speak for Councillor Owen, he'll speak for himself. But I don't think the motion was that we weren't going to go ahead with this. Not at all. He was asking what the cost will be over the 50-year span, and as Councillor Owen said, early days there won't be a lot of infrastructure maintenance. It's going to be very minimal. 20 years' time it might change, but my understanding is that the motion was not against building these facilities. Councillor Owen might like to elaborate on that when he closes up, but I'm for the motion of building these facilities. Whatever that is, whether it's against or it's for, I hope I get a better understanding. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I've got another speaker. Thank you, Councillor Letitia Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't be supporting this alternative motion either. To say that we've been given a 1-2-page report to base our decision on is totally incorrect. This has come before Council on a number of occasions. In fact, it came to Council on October 16th, 2017. We also had an update on April 23rd of this year, outlining all of the social housing projects that we've currently got on the board. And clearly in there it states the obligation and commitment Council is making to these. So it's not a 1 or 2 page document. It's 2 documents plus a number of verbal documents, verbal updates along the way. This is not something new. Never along the way of any of those discussions have these concerns been raised before, not once. In fact, I can remember having discussions of what a great model this one is, that Council retains the ownership of the land and that that's the way to go rather than sell off the asset. It's also a great project. The partners that are going to finance the building of this, as Councillor Jodie Owen said, $2.3 million. They're gifting to Cardinia Shire to look after our vulnerable community. Ways are going to manage the centre. Windermere are going to provide the wraparound services for these families to get them back on their feet and back on track. This is a great project. And I don't for the life of me understand why all of a sudden these issues are coming up when we've had over 12 months of talking about this model to have raised those concerns. Why weren't they raised earlier? Up until a week ago, they have not been raised. I think I'll leave it there because this has made me really quite angry that we've gotten to this point and now we're asking questions when we haven't asked those questions along the way. We've had a verbal update today of what the cost will be, approximately $400 a year for the gardening. Well, over the 50 years, that's about $20,000 to provide all that social welfare and welcoming that Councillor Schilling provided. For every dollar spent, we get $11 back in social return. That far outweighs $20,000 over 50 years. I think this is a bit of a no-brainer.
Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Before I go back to the mover to sum up. I must say what I'm hearing around the room is that most people actually, from what they've seen so far, support, other than some extra detail that is being looked for in relation to it. We're not actually talking about any planning application here, so whether or not what it's going to look like isn't really the question. It's about, I believe, Councillor Owen asking for a report for more detail around the expense. I do agree that we have had extensive conversations about this, and the amount of money that would be looked to put in, considering the asset that we would attain and the asset to the community for those people who are in desperate need of shelter in our community, I think is absolutely paramount. I would like to think that everybody would come on board if it was only a matter of as a report that came forward that moved it. If I could go to one of the general managers in relation to this and ask the question, when would this come back to council be deferred till in this motion? So therefore, how long would it be delayed if we had a report back for us to approve the lease?
And then the earliest would be the October council meeting, obviously, Mr Mayor.
So basically in 4 weeks' time.
That would be the earliest opportunity.
No worries. If I could go to the CEO who would like to add something. Thank you.
Don't know who is going to put the whole project in jeopardy. That's a question I can't answer tonight. But, you know, this project has been on the go for 2 years. But if we don't adopt this tonight, one of the things we don't know is will it put the whole project in jeopardy.
Thank you. I will go back to the mover to sum up. I think it is evidently clear that everyone around the room supports these sort of projects and the need for them. It's just a matter of some people need a bit more detail to be satisfied. I'd like to think that everyone in the room would support it at the end of the day, because we don't need people to get down on the people who would move there and trying to get their lives back together. And as a council, we aren't actually putting any more than just offering some land that we've located that isn't being used at all for a really good need within our community. So I'll go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Was there any other speakers, I think? No? It's all good. Back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for your comments. I'll just reiterate, I've submitted this alternate motion as per the councillor rules. Once this additional financial information did not come, I decided to make this alternative motion as per the rules. So it wasn't out of the hat, I'm breaching rules as per, and I'm sure there's many councillors around this room that put in alternate motions Monday morning. So there's nothing different, nothing sinister. In relation to no-brainer, I fully support council's intention in relation to providing such housing. In my work, I see people every day that need these housing. So I don't want any councillor to sort of indicate, that I do not support this type of housing. As a councillor, I have to be responsible for council's dollars. Once again, verbal comments, measly $400. Take that for granted. I want to see a document that says what is our what will it cost council? What are we up for? A verbal conversation at 5:30 tonight. I'm supposed to be comfortable with that in making a decision. Why haven't all these attachments, these previous conversations had at briefings, attached to the report? Why not? For residents to see. We've got them compiled. Why not have them as attachments to the report? Then we won't have a page and a half for councillors to make a decision. We're making a decision on the recommendations on that 1.5 page. I remember the time when we purchased this land, well over $1 million, probably 10 years ago, and we got criticised while we bought it. We wanted to make sure this was going to be used for a really good purpose. I'm not saying this is not a really good purpose, but we have to get this right. This block of land is attached to the Historical Society. It is a gateway to Pakenham. We will never get this land back, maybe in 50 years' time. We will get this land back if this lease proceeds. Gateway site. All I'm seeking for more information. As I said before, we've got a policy coming to us in 2 weeks' time that talks about what we're talking about tonight. Why make a decision when a policy is pending? It just seems rushed to me. I do not know why we have to make a decision tonight. I don't know why. I feel rushed making a decision. Why are we being rushed to make this decision? It's up for councillors to decide. But I just seek your support. I want to be financially responsible for, with ratepayers' dollars going into 50 years. I reiterate, I support this project. All I'm asking for more information, and a deferment will not hurt that. And I request councillor support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen, for summing up. So what we're looking at, Mr. Evans, just to make this totally clear, is this would come back to, we would get a report and it would come back to council in the October meeting. That is correct, for the same decision to be made on the substantive motion, not the alternate motion, which is to defer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We will come back via a council briefing session, yes. And if the information provided is sufficient to answer Councillor Owen's questions, then we should be able to make the October council meeting. Failing that, the next council meeting obviously is in November.
Yep. No worries. So the intention would be, if it all comes back okay, would be the October meeting.
We'll make every effort to make the October council meeting, Mr. Mayor.
No, thank you. Just wanted to make that clear. Okay, we'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the alternate motion to defer? All those against? The deferment's declared carried.
Can I call a division, please?
Absolutely. We'll call a division. All those in favour of the deferment? Councillor Graham Moore, Councillor Carol Ryan, Councillor Ray Brown, Councillor Brett Owen and Councillor Colin Ross. All those against? Councillor Jodie Owen, Councillor Michael Schilling, Councillor Jeff Springfield and Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Moving on to item number 4, amendment to the meeting procedure local law, withdrawn by Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council 1 proposes to make Local Law 19 meeting procedures Local Law 2018 to amend Council's meeting procedure local law and undertake the statutory procedures required in accordance with Section 119 and 223 of the Local Government Act 1989. 2, the Chief Executive Officer be authorised to set the day, time and place for the hearing of any submissions received in accordance to Section 223 of the Local Government Act 1989. And 3, resolve to rescind Notice of Motion 756 that stipulates that at least one council meeting, where practicable, will be held in all wards during a calendar year.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have a second to the motion, please? Councillor Michael Schilling, mover to speak. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. This motion is really just tidying up a few things that have come to the surface since we started the live broadcasting of our meetings. Currently in our meeting procedures, we have the provision for community questions, which are submitted prior to the meeting, so we have an opportunity to view the questions and we know what will be asked at the meetings. Currently, questioners can ask a supplementary question according to our bylaws. However, it's come to our attention that there is a certain amount of risk to both the residents and to council in allowing this to happen. We don't know what that supplementary question is, and if the resident had to say something that was defamatory, there could be legal action taken against them, or worse. Council, as the broadcaster of the meetings via the live streaming, is also then liable because we've broadcast it to the general public. So that's why we have to find either a different way of doing things, which is possible. There's perhaps a couple of suggestions already been put forward, and I'm sure that if we talk to our sound tech guy, he might have some suggestions as well on how to go about this. But at the moment, we can't run that risk to our residents or to council. So until we've had some further conversations by opening this up to public consultation, basically, we might get the ideas and the right opportunity, but we have to do something here to change the local law so that it aligns with what we're currently doing in the meetings. As for the notice of motion, that was adopted by council in 2013, and that was a notice of motion brought to council by the former councillor Tanya Baxter And Councillor Baxter's intention here was to make meetings more accessible to the general public. As we all know, Cardinia Shire is a large shire, and some of our areas, it makes it very difficult to get to, in those days, the Pakenham Shire building. Now, even to Officer. For some, it's just not possible. However, the live streaming has changed all of that. Now they don't have to come to the building to be part of the meetings. They can sit at home, and I believe that one of our residents that comes regularly is actually in Tasmania tonight and has already said that he is going to be live streaming and watching our council meeting. So that's the beauty of live streaming. You can be anywhere in the world and watch what's going on here. So the notice of motion that Councillor Baxter moved back in 2013 isn't applicable, and there was a cost involved in that. It was always a cost of setting up all the microphones, in those days it was podcast, so it was still being recorded. These days the cost would be extreme because we've got to then set up the cameras as well. So if we don't have to do it any longer because of the live streaming, then I think we need to just tidy all of that up and rescind that motion so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Shilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support the public exhibition, and I do acknowledge the need to rescind motion number 756. It is important to align our bylaws with our current practices, and I will say up front that I do think we need a better system. In saying that, there has been a bit of narrative around the community around the supplementary questions. I don't support the removal of supplementary questions. I do understand that there's additional risk webcasting on council, but I do believe the public are entitled to seek further information from our officers and also do that in the public arena. I've got no doubt that webcasting is best practice in terms of local government transparency, and I'm proud now to see that Cardinia is in line with most other councils across the country. So look, I do believe though that stopping the supplementary questions would be taking a step back. I think those two elements combined are great for local democracy. In saying that, as it currently stands, I don't necessarily think supplementary questions are working as well as what they potentially could be. Most councillors, including myself, are happy to stay back after meetings, have a conversation with members of the gallery. At present, though, I sometimes feel that conversation is taking place during the community question time, which I don't think is necessarily the best use of time for officers, councillors and other members of the gallery as well. So I do think there needs to be a certain structure. On the issue of risk, and once again, all we're voting for tonight is the potential is to put this on public exhibition to seek feedback and to try and get some answers. But this is just some of my background thoughts. On the issue of risk, I guess when we're talking about risk and risk to council, it's very much the narrative of a private organisation set up to serve people. But I see the role of council more as an active democracy where we are encouraging people to get involved in decision-making process. And in a lot of respects, there is risk to absolutely everything we do. There's risk in crossing a road, there's risk driving on a substandard road, and I'd also say there's probably more risk caught up in the red tape at Windermere Boulevard crossing in someone getting hurt than there is somebody asking a supplementary question at a council meeting. The point is that I guess as a council we do expose ourselves to risk by being in pure existence. So I would argue that during this process my feedback would be that we need to keep our residents informed when asking supplementary questions and let them know what the risks are, and that it's not appropriate to specifically name your neighbours who you may have a grievance against on a live web stream, because that could potentially lead to some issues down the track. So I do think we need a better system, and there are a few ways that we could actually have the best of both worlds after we change this local law. The first one, as I've already mentioned, we can give more information to residents and empower residents to make decisions that perhaps have lesser potential to impact on their personal safety after a meeting, should their comments be seen by the person who they're not very happy with. The other thing is we could potentially turn off the live stream before supplementary questions. And the other, and I think the most sensible option is that we have somebody recording our meetings, and it's actually as simple as turning the volume button down on the live stream while the supplementary question's happening, and then turning the volume back up while the council officer answers the question. So, look, I support this going on exhibition. I do think we need a better way. I definitely support that we need to rescind motion 756. It is obsolete now because we have moved ahead with technology. But I do think that overall the combination of webcasting and giving the community supplementary questions is a huge strength, and it is something that I'd like to see continuing into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be voting against this. The draft local laws is intending to delete community supplementary questions. I don't support that at all. I think there's other ways that we can try and resolve these concerns about risk. But at the moment, this report is saying let's delete local law that allows supplementary questions. So I do not support that. If we've got concern about risk, let's deal with it in other ways, not by attempting to amend the law and seek what people say, and then we might change our mind later on. Doesn't make sense to me, so I'll be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Nobody heard that.
Would you like to say it again, Councillor Brown?
I'll say it again. Yeah, I'm against anything being taken out that affects the transparency of this council, in this instance in the respect of supplementary questions, because quite often I don't think the people get the right answer with the first question and they go away unsatisfied or dissatisfied. And it may be that they may meet after the council meeting with the responsible officer or even a councillor, but that does not brief the other councillors. So we really don't know what is being said. So I'll be voting against this section being taken out of the local laws. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers? I've got Councillor Moore and then Councillor Ryan. No, Councillor Moore. Thank you, Councillor
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this does bring debate. There's no doubt about that, and we enjoy debate here. Not everybody's going to be on the same side. I'm for this motion. I'll be voting for this motion. I believe that having the meetings outside the council chamber and the outer areas is a little bit fruitless in a way, having experienced that over a number of years. When you get 2 or 3 people coming to a meeting that you set up outside our council chamber, it just seems to be fruitless. When we have the cameras and we have the podcasts these days, we haven't got them as we used to have. So I've got no problem about that that concept. The supplementary question is the debate here tonight, I think. And look, the supplementary questions I've seen before, they are a statement, generally a statement, on what the whole concept was of their question. And that happens quite often, and it's very frustrating for us to go through that as a statement. And I believe that the resident who has put the question up can put that supplementary question in the question time. We don't actually, even when there's one question, they usually got about 10 parts to that one question when they come here, Mr. Mayor. And I think that could be corralled. I think we should have some control over that, and controlling that is not having a supplementary question and putting a bit more thought into the question that was initially challenged to our staff. They've got every opportunity to add that in, and I think that's what I believe anyway, Mr. Mayor. And I think we're being transparent. I think we're being fair. That is fairness. And the supplementary question just keeps going on and on and on, like it's about 10 questions after the questions, and it's a difficult arrangement when 99% of the time the actual resident who's asked the question gets a written response, gets a good response, and has the opportunity to discuss it with the staff afterwards and next day if need be. So I just think, and a slight amount of grandstanding, if you like. I know I've been guilty of that myself, Mr Mayor, I know that, and but I just think that's where it stands. And so this law, I think, should be put in place, and I fully support the mover. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I'll just weigh in my thoughts. I must say this motion has two portions to it, one which is about moving our council meetings around the Shire, and the second one is in relation to the supplementary questions. I was one of the people who, like most councillors here, who supported moving the council meetings around the Shire, but that was done with transparency in mind, so people who couldn't travel down here had access to watch our council meetings or to see important issues that might come up if they wanted to attend. At the time, we didn't have live streaming, and I must say, to even take the recorded information to all the parts was quite difficult and hard, and sometimes it didn't even work properly when we took it. The staff did the best they could. Now that we do have live streaming, it's not only recorded verbally, but it's also, you can see people speaking to their emotions, and that's recorded, and people can watch that live. They can either watch it on a broadcast as well. So I must say I do support going away from the expense of moving it around, because we do have the expense of live webcasting, which I think is a much better medium in the long term. And the second question about supplementary questions. When it came to live streaming, I went to visit some other councils when I first became mayor, and I went over to Moonee Valley Council, who do this extremely professionally. I think they spend $150,000 on buying the equipment. They have an officer out of their communications team who monitors everything that goes on at the meeting. They have a dump button. They have a lawyer who sits there listening for statements, people using names of people in the community or names of councillors in a defamatory way. And they see it fit because they believe one defamation case, because we're the broadcaster of something that goes out there that harms someone in the community, is, and I mean, if it was $100,000, which probably isn't high in the defamation sort of realm, well, that would be 50 ratepayers, just about full rates for the year going out, because we didn't find it responsible to try and quell what's done. Now we've adopted the live screening, which I think is really good, but we don't have the expense there at the moment to put in all the safeguards that we need. And as Councillor Moore pointed out, it's not so much the question that someone might ask, but 9 times out of 10 it isn't another question. It's a statement that people make in judgment of whatever answer they've got, or about people in the community or something like that. And that's just terrible if we're going to give a medium to go out there for people to make these statements on, which is not what it's about. I must say, when you have a look at our council, if you compare it to any other council when it comes to councillor question time, not only do we give the people an opportunity, and sometimes we say questions, we have questions that have 10 parts to them, 15 parts to them. We never deny them. We always include all of the parts to the questions. And then secondly, we always give the answer in writing. So people who put in 15 questions will get a considered answer in writing that they can take away, that council's accountable for. And not only that, usually the responsible author of that document they get handed back is usually sitting at the table, and they can have a personal conversation with them about the answers they were given and ask more questions if they like. And I know that's been done. They even have private meetings. Some people in the community have meetings just about every year over the budget with their general manager for corporate services. They come in, he'll spend a couple of hours with them going over every single thing for them. He'll give them written responses and the whole lot. So as far as it goes, and most councils don't do that. They just let you ask one question. They listen to your answer. I've even seen this council going back 10 years ago where the Mayor of the day took on notice question after question after question and said, I'll take that on notice, and never ever got back to the community. So since I've been on council, we always answer questions. We always give people an opportunity to say more. But with the live streaming, until we find a solution for it, we need to protect the community and protect council and council's money. So I will be supporting that. Mr. Evans, I would just like to make sure that even if this motion gets passed tonight, this does go back out to the community for comment to come back and give their thoughts on this as well. So there's another safeguard there that they get an opportunity to weigh into it as well. Is that correct, please?
Yeah, certainly correct there, Mr Mayor. If this motion, as moved by Councillor Wilmot, is carried, we will be undertaking a exercise of public notification of the draft local law, seeking community input into that draft local law, and I would encourage as many people as possible to take that opportunity. And obviously the notice of motion, if the motion moved by Councillor Wilmot is successful, then that notice of motion will be rescinded, which will remove the requirement for the council to have meetings away from this building.
Thank you for clearing that up, Mr Evans. That's all I've got to say. I will go back to them, unless there's any other speakers. If not, I'll go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't take up too much more of time on this. Yes, currently, what's put before us is supplementary questions to be deleted. However, during the public notice period, if somebody comes forward with some practical ideas and solutions, and that includes councillors, we can all be thinking about this and finding practical solutions. I notice Councillor Schillen's already put a couple of solutions potentially on the table. But we've had this discussion. We've actually had the incident arise where we did have a resident made some comments during supplementary question time that had to be removed from the recording, but only after it had been in the public realm for about 24 hours. So it's already happened. We have to safeguard our residents from doing that sort of thing and putting themselves at risk and also putting councillors at risk. So I hope that councillors will support this motion going forward and that we rescind the motion 756 at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Declared carried. Call for a division. All those in favour, please stand. Councillor Jeff Springfield, Councillor Letitia Wilmot, Councillor Graham Moore, Councillor Michael Schilling, Councillor Jodie Owen and Councillor Colin Ross. All those against? Councillor Brett Owen, Councillor Ray Brown and Councillor Carol Ryan. Moving on to item number 6. Item number 5. 2018 Community Satisfaction Survey, withdrawn by Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to move the Community Satisfaction Survey for 2018.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have a seconder, please? A seconder. Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Back to the mover to speak. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Letitia. Councillor Wilmot. Sorry for seconding this item. So I would just like to move the results of the 2018 Community Satisfaction Survey and make the results available on the Council's website. We hear a lot about Council and our performance, and we get a lot of feedback from residents around our performance, particularly around customer service and the way that we handle residents' issues. So this is a really good way of, once again, being transparent and showing the community how Council are tracking and areas that we need to improve if we are to optimise our service that we provide to the community. So this is the 7th year that we have ran the community survey, and the aim, once again, is just to get some detailed feedback on how as a council we're performing in the delivery of our services. The survey is conducted by JWS Research, and this year it took place between the 1st of February and the 30th of March. The sample size of this survey is about 400, and those people are randomly selected across the Cardinia Shire, and that's fitting, given it's measuring Cardinia Shire's performance. Overall, the survey captured a diverse segment of the community. Out of those, almost 70% had some type of contact with the council over the past 12 months. So the majority of the people that the company spoke to had something to do with the council. So the reason why we do the survey is around quality improvement and to provide us as councillors a great insight. which allows us to advocate for better service delivery, but also ensures we can support quality improvement projects across the respective business units. When we have this type of accurate data at our fingertips, when we are given suggestions from officers, we have that empirical evidence there to support that and then go out to the community and advocate why we're doing what we're doing. There are some good news stories in the survey with an increase to our overall performance score index. So it was 57% in 2017 and it's now 61% in 2018. Overall, Cardinia is performing better than not only the interface, but also statewide. So the interface scores 60% and statewide, the average council scored 59% in their overall score. Our best scoring items were around waste management, with 74% of those surveyed being satisfied with our performance. Second up was emergency and disaster management at almost 70%. And finally, our recreation facilities at 68%. Our worst performance being, and to be honest, it was no surprise to me, the first being our sealed local roads and unsealed roads, with a negative 37%. Planning for population growth at negative 28%, and condition of sealed roads at negative 26%. The survey also shows us what services are most and least important to our residents. So our residents rate our most important services as waste management, emergency and disaster management, and sealed roads. Under the least important items, and it's quite interesting because councils are known for roads, rates and rubbish, but as we know, there's multiple business units that exist within councils that keep the community ticking. But the least important people spoke about was tourism development, community and cultural, and business and community development. I agree with all the top priorities. The ones that are listed as the least important, I have to reassure community members that to create a cohesive community, thriving local economy, we do need to look at tourism development and look at our community capital and our cultural aspects to our community. Before I hand over to my seconder, I'd just like to highlight some interesting demographics as to who was surveyed. So the higher performance scores were mainly by women compared to men. And in terms of age demographics, the highest performing performance scores were given by residents aged 18 to 34, compared to the lowest, which were for people between the ages of 50 and 64 years of age. Look, this is a comprehensive document. It probably takes a few hours to read, but I highly recommend, if you're interested in the performance of local government and what people see us as doing well and potentially areas for improvement, I would recommend reading it. But I'll hand over to my seconder now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Letitia Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I've got anything further to add. Councillor Schilling has certainly summarised the report quite nicely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. And I support this report because the report carries quite a significant amount of information. It would have taken a long time to put it together. As Councillor Schilling says, it's on the internet, it's on the web. Take your time to read it because it tells some interesting stories. But what I would like to highlight is the fact that when we get these things, are we going to act on them? Because some significant things like the unsealed roads, we're up to an 80, they're classified as an 81 as far as level of importance goes, and we're 37% below that issue. So there's a big variance there, and I think we as a council, we should be looking at that and not just say it's a good report, let's put it away. We say, what can we do about our unsealed roads? Because it's been highlighted as probably the most important thing on this survey. The other interesting thing is the women seem more accepting of the survey rather than men, and the age demographics are the same. They look at the similar type of thing. The council's performance versus the group average, in other words, the average over the whole spectrum, we're significantly higher than a group average in waste management. But on the other side of the spectrum, we're significantly lower in local streets and footpaths, unsealed roads, making community decisions and tourism development. I hope, and I'm sure that it will happen, that we use this as a template to see how we can get that up, because it's measurable. And the other interesting thing I found from it, that, and I've got all my papers here and I can never find what I'm looking for. Our top 3 performing areas: waste management, emergency and disaster management, recreational facilities, and then we go down to the areas for improvement, which was maintenance of unsealed roads, planning for population growth in the area, and condition of our sealed roads. So this is a document that I think can provide a tremendous reference point for our works people to look at it and say, well, these are the areas where we're deficient at the moment and we need to get better at. But the real kicker is, if I can find it, and I found it, I haven't, but I will in a minute, was the ratio of people that would rather take a reduction in services rather than pay the extra rates. Now, I find that quite interesting, because I think we should say to the people, and I have it here now, notwithstanding the results of this whole survey, you're forced to choose a majority. 54% of residents would prefer service cuts to keep rates at current levels to rate rises to improve services. Keep rates at current levels to rate rise to improve service, 29%. So 54% would prefer service cuts. So I think if we ask that 54% what those service cuts are, I think it'd be very interesting. Like, we'd only empty a bin once a month, something like that, or I can't say we grade your unsealed road because we're down in that anyway. So but that's interesting. I think that's quite an interesting statement there, that 54% of residents, and I can't believe that, because I think if push come to shove and you said, what would you give up if we keep the rates the same, there wouldn't be too much with their hand up, and it would have to be across the board. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Graham will speak. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Brown. You make some interesting comments about that. This survey has got some good news and some bad news for us, and I really on the side of Councillor Brown when it comes down to what are we going to do with this document. We spend a lot of time. We ask our residents to actually contribute to these surveys, and I want to thank them for contributing, because it's a fair job. I know when people ring and say, have you got time to do a survey on the phone, it doesn't happen very often. So it's the sort of thing that they put the time in to support us, to show us what they're thinking and where they are. And I'd like to meet that 54% who want to slow the services down. I find that hard to believe myself. But so it's an interesting to get a cross-section across our community from all different levels. As you've stated, Councillor Shilling, that they're all different levels and ages, and it's just a really great document to read, to pick up all the items that are we doing it right or are we doing it wrong? Do we do it right very often? Probably not. That's what the survey says to me. So it's an interesting document to read, and I would ask the residents who actually submitted and did the survey should actually read that and read back on that document to see how they travelled against the rest of our community. But thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Graham Moore. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? If I could just, before I go back to the mover to sum up, I think probably I'm actually really proud to see that question's been put in there, because it's an optional question, the one around whether or not you'd like to keep rate increases low, and at the adverse of spending less money, because that's one that is optional, and for a long time many councils never put that one in there. So that's really good to hear back from the community, because that is really important. I think it probably comes more around, not that people would so much like things to be spent less on in relation to services or whatever. It comes about affordability of being able to pay. The cost of living is really, really high. A lot of people are really struggling. And if they knew their council rates could only go up at probably the same rate as what their pensions go up or their wages go up, they'd accept what the spending would be because they'd say that's all we can afford to pay. So I think it's more about the affordability, not so much about wanting to cut different things. Anyway, that's all I'd like to add. I'll head back to the, if anyone else would like to speak, because I've had my say anyway, before I go back to the mover. If not, I'll go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to all the councillors that contributed to the discussion. Look, these surveys are important, as voiced by my colleagues, about making sure we're tracking in the right direction. And as was also discussed, whilst there were some small wins, there are also areas that, as a council, we need to really look at how we can improve on our current standard. And I think that's really how any successful organisation goes about their business. We know in Cardinia recently we've won a number of innovation awards, particularly around our business development, and I think this all feeds into that continuous development and that continuous improvement process. So I'd like to congratulate council staff who do work behind the scenes in analysing this data and looking at business improvement plans. And I was just about to congratulate Mr. Madden, our Manager of Corporate Services, who's now back, on all the hard work that his team does, particularly around that customer service face and making sure that we're able to be responsive to our residents' needs and answer inquiries and fix issues as they arise. Look, so I will say we do have a long way to go in delivering services to our broader community to a level where people are happy with the level of service below that 61%. That means that there's still a significant portion of the community that still think we have a long way to go, and I'm proud to be on a council that is working towards ensuring that as a council we are working to meet the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared unanimously carried. We will move on to item number 6, contract 1816, provision of turf mowing and associated works for sports playing surfaces. Withdrawn by Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the Council accept the tender submitted by Citywide Service Solutions for contract 18/16, the provision of turf mowing and associated works for the sports playing surfaces, CT 1816. 2, the common seal of council be affixed to the contract documents. And 3, all tenderers be advised accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a second to the motion? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Mover to speak.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for the second. This is a great contract. These tenderers were assessed on the following criteria: compliance with the specification, capability and capacity to supply service, relevant experience and known past service, quality of service and achievement of delivery of the program, and a comparison of submitted prices and weighted scores resulted in the recommendation of the best value for money, as our job as councillors to get best value for money for our ratepayers, and this has been followed. Where the Citywide Service Solutions were successful, and hopefully we can put this through as a motion tonight. They're assessed by the evaluation panel, comprising of mainly of staff members and our procurement department, for the sum of $356,520 plus GST. These contractors are our current contractors that we use for our parks and gardens in our current contract. All contracts that are over $150,000 must call for tenders, as we've done in this circumstance, as per the Local Government Act. There were 4 tenderers, and the submitted tenders for this service, and I believe we've done in due diligence to achieve the best result. But I'll go back to my seconder, and he might like to make some comments before I take it any further, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Over to the seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Ray Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I support this contract. There are 6 reserves and 11 playing fields, I believe, in the contract. Citywide, to my belief and experience, have shown great improvement in the way they're operating at the moment, and could not fault their performance. The one thing I have a reservation about, though, is the timeliness of the cuts. With the weather, the way the weather sometimes moves about, I know at some reserves there, the cricket clubs and that are screaming to get it cut, and they've been told, no, you can't get it cut because we're not cutting. You're not due for another week. So I would like to find out what we do in that regard, whether there's a supplementary cut that can be put in there, or have they been rigorously set at a time, or can the users say, look, we need another cut, and can they do that cut at their expense? And I'm sure they can, but would we make that cut at their expense at a reasonable rate? Perhaps Mr. Ellis could answer that for me, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. With the contract, the 350-odd thousand, it's really predicated on a certain cycle of cuts, a certain number of cuts on, as you say, the 11 playing surfaces throughout the year. But there is a schedule of rates component that still fits within the 530-odd thousand dollars, which is the open space provision for supplementary cuts or further irrigation if there are unseasonal conditions. So there is some flexibility there, but clearly we want to ensure that we are applying consistent standards and ones that are appropriate for playing surfaces, and that we don't have certain reserves with quite a number of more cuts than others. So we would be wanting to work on a regular basis as far as the cycle's concerned, but there is provision for exceptional circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Who will manage the contract in respect of compliance with the rates and etc.?
So council's Parks and Reserves staff actually manage it.
I was wondering whether that's the right people that should be doing it and not the sport and recreation people who the reserves have close contact with all the time. That's just a suggestion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the way in which the open space facilities and assets are maintained, there is effectively a team approach, and when they sit down and look at the reserves, for example, there are turf management consultants that come out that are effectively engaged through the recreation area that will come up with recommendations that are fed into, I guess, the provider side, which is the ones that administer the contracts externally. So there certainly is that input, and if it was felt that by a certain reserve committee that there required a change in the service levels for good reason, then that would go through our recreation people before it gets into the maintenance area.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. I'm comfortable with that. I think it will work quite well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, I will go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Brown, for your comments. I'd also like to ask a question of the Manager of Services and Assets, Mr. Michael Ellis. Just the point made here that it's for mowing and associated works. Could you enlighten me and the gallery here tonight of what the associated works would be? Because I have people in the residents actually who've got lawn mowing rounds, and they've got contracts and those sort of things and whatever. Even our mayor himself has those circumstances. But I've explained that these contracts would be maybe of too large a nature for handling of those type of things.
Councillor Moore, you're not saying I have a conflict of interest, are you?
No, I would never say that to you, Mr. Mayor.
It's to do with turf works anyway.
I would never say that to you, Mr. Mayor. No, never. I might think it, but I don't say it, Mr. Mayor. So I'd just like to know what the associated works may be. It's not just mowing one oval. Like there might be a resident that lives in Coral Inn, if you like, for instance, has got a large lawnmower that might like to take this contract on. But it's more to it than that, isn't it, Mr. Ellis? Could you enlighten us on what that extra associated works may be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there's certainly other elements of work that are required under the contract, in addition to the main task, which is the mowing of the ovals. A lot of it's about actually the turf management and some irrigation works as well. But the turf management looks at maintaining the turf to a suitable standard, involving treatment of fungal diseases, the coring of the surfaces, fertilising, and also treating specific problems that might arise from time to time. And I think you'd be well aware of the salinity issues that we had at the Nunagoon Reserve Oval, and the need to address the water quality issues associated with the bore water. So there's a range of other areas which I'd call sort of specialist areas that need also to be provided to ensure that the surface is suitable for playing at all times.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellis. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, it would be any pests that would attack the grass, as well as there are a few of them, not playing on the grass, I mean in the grass, that would actually also have to be assessed and treated as well. So therefore, it's a big range. It's just not mowing grass. So you've got to understand it's just mowing turf. Thank you. So our budget allocation for Rec Reserve, the maintenance for 18-19 is $524,000. So it's well covered. This contract is well covered in that amount. The remainder of the financial budget is for, it could be for pump breakdowns, oval restoration, as we were talking before. It could be treatments, and the cost of water. The cost of water is a very expensive commodity when you're talking about reserves and keeping the turf going. So yes, and as you said, Councillor Brown, we have they cover 6 ovals and 11 ovals and 6 rec reserves within our Shire. So this is a further contract to extend their contract for an additional 3 years. So I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Mayor. I've said all I have to say about this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I'm just going to step out of line a little bit because I forgot to have something to say about this, which I wanted to, and I wrote down, but I went back to the mover to speak. Just in relation to this, I can remember when Citywide didn't have the contract here at Cardinia Shire, and we went looking at where Citywide, who was one of the applicants, were putting in for the contract, and I must say we didn't go to all of these places, but if you go to the City of Melbourne, the City of Adelaide, or the City of Sydney, Citywide do their contracts in relation to this matter. Also, too, it was really unique that Citywide were going to take on an amount of local workers and younger workers and a few of their own company workers into the mix of the contract, which was really we could support, because local workers getting jobs and younger people getting jobs was really good. I just asked Mr. Ellis, how many times have we renewed this contract? Would this be if this gets passed?
I'm just trying to recall, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been twice to date, yes.
Thank you. I think that speaks for itself. I know that anyone who comes to the Cardinia Shire Council, between Citywide, what they do on the sports grounds, and our recreational reserve committees, who do an amazing job as well, it is a really prideful thing that we do have here, that we take it seriously, all our grounds, and they get looked after in an amazing way. So I'll be supporting this this motion, and I'll go back to the mover to speak again, unless he doesn't want to. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I have just about said enough. Other than Citywide, the contractor, to my opinion, does a fantastic job, and I have no hesitation to recommend this. And employing the local young people, as you said, is dead right, and so therefore it's I've got no hesitation to recommend this, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? Declared unanimously carried. We'll move on to item number 7, Major Recreation Facilities Contract 15/01, extension of term, withdrawn by Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Council appoint Aligned Leisure for a further 3-year term as the contractor for Contract 15/01, the Major Recreation Facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have a second to the motion, please? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Letitia Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Moore. Move it to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start on the actual document, I'd like to, for the sake of transparency, I would like to read out and acknowledge a declaration by the author of this report, Heather Callaghan, who writes, Heather declares that under the provisions of Section 78C of the Local Government Act 1989, she has an indirect interest in the following matter due to the having received applicable gift from the Richmond Football Club, and make this declaration in accordance with the provision of the Section 80C of the Act. My research has shown that these are gifts of football tickets for and the like from the Richmond Football Club. And I just want to congratulate Heather for declaring that as per our local government act here. Aligned Leisure. I've had a lot to do with Aligned Leisure. I actually swim at the local pool. I don't know whether that's conflictive or not to swim there. I hope it's not, because it's a fantastic facility, and I've got no hesitation to recommend Aligned Leisure myself in this contract. They also manage the Cardinia Life. They manage the Pakenham Regional Tennis Centre. Also the Officer Community Hub, the IYU Recreation Reserve, our soccer reserve, which is the synthetic pitch programming, and our 4 seasonal outdoor pools. And they do a fantastic job. The panel, just to get this nice and clear, the panel that was comprised to address this contract was comprising of the General Manager for Corporate Services, the General Manager of Community Wellbeing, the Manager of Active Communities, and Team Leader Leisure Facilities and Active Reserves, and the Leisure Facilities Officer. So there was a fair team of our staff assessing Aligned Leisure's quality of their works. And so it's really great to see them doing it all the way across the board, noting that the tender and contracts extension processes have been undertaken in accordance with the Council's procurement and contract processes, and is in line with the Council policy on facility management. So it's all above board, Mr Mayor. This is a really great result, and I've got no hesitation in putting this forward and moving this. But I'll put it across to my seconder, and thank you for the second, Councillor Wilmot, and I'll let you have some words if you prefer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Seconder to speak. Thank you, Councillor Letitia Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Moore. I'm more than happy to support this motion tonight. I think Aligned Leisure over the last 2 years have done a remarkable job. They've certainly increased the patronage, and when I look at their action plan going forward, some of the new programs that they will instigate over the next 3 years are fantastic, and I'm more than happy to support that. You mentioned the panel that assessed all of this. I note that there's also been consultation with other internal departments who have partnered with Aligned Leisure to deliver programs, and they've had input into this as well. And it's obviously been good, thorough investigation as to the renewal or the extension of this contract. And I again think that Aligned Leisure have made a real difference to some of our sporting facilities and what they've achieved in the last couple of years. And I'm more than happy to support this extended contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Ray Brown. Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and I am against this motion. This is not about Aligned Leisure. It is not about the performance of Aligned Leisure. It is not about the panel that selected Aligned Leisure for an extension of the contract. What it is about is the apparent urgency that this extension has taken place. This contract extension was decided upon evaluating the first 2 years of a 3-year term. The first 2 years of a 3-year term, which is extraordinary that you would do an evaluation and then give a recommendation that you renew a contract 9 months out from the expiry date of that contract, which is going to give the 9 months then an additional 3 years. As I said before, it's not about Aligned Leisure. It's not about the panel that's made the recommendation. It's about the urgency. There are some things in this that are quite unusual, and some of the unusual things are that our CEO, and I wish him well in retirement, he finishes up here in about 19 working days or something like that. We have an incoming CEO who has no say at this one of our, in our 10th biggest contracts, within the 10th biggest contracts this council has. And our incoming CEO, who will be expected to manage it via her subordinates, will have no input. We have taken that away from her for no good reason. There is plenty of time to defer this until she comes on board, even if it is a month. That still is 8 months before the contract expires. I've spoken about the anomalies there in respect of the CEO leaving, the supervisor of the contract leaving. We've got our new CEO coming on board. Don't you think that it's a courtesy, a common courtesy, that she would be across? And I have been told that she has viewed this contract and she's happy with it. Now, I'm going to go on record here saying I hope that's true. I hope that when she comes on board, she says, yes, I was given the courtesy of looking at that contract, and I was given the courtesy of saying whether I agreed with it or not. So I hope that's true, and if she does, well and good. But I still believe that a courtesy to let new eyes look at this contract, who is she going to be responsible for? And as I said before, there's no great urgency. There is plenty of time. I'd like Councillor Moore, when he sums up, to tell me what the impact is going to be to delay this 1 month. I mean, I'm all for Aligned Leisure. I think they're great. I haven't got a problem with the assessment panel. They've done the best they can, and they've looked at the plan going forward of Aligned Leisure, and there's lots and lots of ticks in there, and I'd be very surprised if they weren't appointed again, and I'd be disappointed if they weren't. So the question I'm asking is, why are we in this such a rush? We're getting a CEO coming in. We pay a big money. We've got one of our major contracts coming up, and we're taking that right out of her hands. So we've lost the accountable officer, Mr. McQuillan. We've lost the contract supervisor, who will not have no further part in this contract, and we're going to take it right out of the hands of our incoming leader, who we pay a lot of money for. Could be her first decision, and I think it's a courtesy. And if Councillor Moore's motion is defeated, I'll move a motion that in a couple of months' time, that with the new CEO's recommendation, we pass this contract. It's all about, I've got nothing against Aligned Leisure, I've got nothing against the officers, the panel, but I'm just the rush, the haste. The haste doesn't sound right to me. It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Why are we doing it? There's no need. 3 months. 3 months is the trigger point for this contract. So the contract expires the 30th of June 2019. We don't have to move till April. Why are we moving this side of Christmas even? That's my question. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I believe the CEO would like to
I just want to
speak.
correct
Thank you, Councillor
something
McQuillan.
that Councillor Ray Brown said, which is incorrect. I've never said that I've given the contract to the future CEO. I said I gave her a briefing report briefing report to the CEO.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr McQuillan. I apologise if I've misquoted you, but do you think just a briefing is sufficient enough for a decision, a momentous decision like this, for her to be left out of it?
Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and I do support Councillor Brown. I think Aligned Leisure does an amazing job, no doubt about that. But I note that on the 21st of March 2016, Council appointed Aligned Leisure, so that was 3 months before the end of the previous contract with YMCA. So 3 months to transition. Today, councillors were told that it needs a long time to prepare if there was a change of contractors. Back in 2016, it was 3 months. I think I do support Councillor Brown's decision to defer this, but I want to state for the record, I think Aligned Leisure does an amazing job, but there is no rush to extend the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers either for or against? Councillor Michael Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
I'll be supporting Councillor Moore in this. We've all identified that we're happy with everything other than giving the CEO, our new CEO, the courtesy. We can't just halt council business waiting for a new CEO to come by. It needs to be business as usual with the council. We are all intelligent people around this room and have scrutinised. Sorry, Councillor Ryan. We've all scrutinised this contract. We know exactly what is in it. We know their action plan. We've all identified that Aligned Leisure are doing a great job managing our facilities. We're operating within the law. There is no reason, I don't believe, that we should be stopping this tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? If not, before I go back to the mover to sum up, I can remember when we went out to tender with our previous contractors, the YMCA, and it's quite a long process that you need to go through, and it takes plenty of time because you need to give everyone due process. I must say, Aligned Leisure, since they've come on board, we were the very first council that they actually took on in this capacity around the state. And since that time, they've actually got 4 councils who have now taken them on as their preferred provider in this contract, contract. I must say, I'm just going to ask Mr. Evans a question. If this was to get knocked back today, does that mean it can't come up for another 3 months?
The only way that Councillor Moore's, if Councillor Moore's motion is defeated, there will need to be a subsequent motion put. So as there is a motion on the books, it depends on the wording of that particular motion, whether the matter can be considered a direct negative or not.
Because sometimes if it's exactly the same and it gets defeated, it cannot come up for another 3 months.
That's correct.
That's correct. Just making that really clear. So if people knocked it back today, 3 months would bring us practically right on the top of Christmas time before it could come back. Not if it's worded different, depending on the wording. No worries. I just wanted to clear that up. I must say, I think Aligned Leisure has rebuilt relationships in our sporting clubs around the Shire that was broken for a long time. They've rebuilt. They do have an amazing amount of goodwill within the community when you talk to the sporting clubs. And I think goodwill between sporting clubs and the people running the contract does an amazing job. I must say, I think this group, from knowing the groups out there that are in this space, they do a fabulous job. And I just think people who do a really good job in this world, sometimes you reward people who do good jobs for you. And I'm going to support this motion because I just think that they do a great job. If that means they start, is it actually, Mr. I'll go to, I think it's Is it you, Jenny? General Manager of Community Wellbeing, Jenny Cicluna. Just curious, this is an extension to the 3 years, or it would start again at the end of 2 years, their contract?
The contract is 3 + 3 + 3. So
it's 3 + 3. We're just enabling the second three.
The second term, yeah.
No, so that would mean it would be for another 4 years, because you'd still have 12 months to go on the existing contract.
Yes, Mr Mayor, it would be the existing contract of 12 months and one further term of 3 years. That's all that's being decided today.
Yep. No worries. I just wanted to make that clear. Sorry? We're in our 3rd year now. No worries. Yep. Okay, that's all. Sorry. You can? Yes. I'll allow it. Yep.
Mr McQuillan, when you briefed the incoming CEO, she was agreeable to this contract. Okay, well, I'd like that to be on. Sorry?
Can the microphone be on, please?
Yeah. Can you speak into the microphone when you say that, please?
When I met with the CEO, the future CEO, I provided her with a copy of the briefing paper, and I said this will be going to the September council meeting for adoption, and she didn't have any issue with that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. If there's no further speakers, I'll go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Graham Moore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank everybody for your input into this, for and against. We need to give this contract a surety of where we're going with this, and that's the way it should be. The point to be made, Mr Mayor, if I may, it's not up to the CEO or the incoming CEO for this contract. It's up to us as councillors to make this decision on this contract. So I don't know why we keep on going on and on about the new CEO and leaving it go and stalling this and delaying a contract where we know how good this contractor is. It's not a matter of what's 3 months delaying going to do this. It's not going to go anywhere. We're very limited to who can actually do contracts like this. There's probably only 3 companies. There's probably only 3 companies that can actually do this type of contract for us as a council. So I can't see, I don't need to justify my position to anybody of why we should vote for this contract to go over the line. I'll leave it up to the councillors, because that's what we're here for. We're here to make those decisions. And look, the incoming CEO will have enough to do. There's going to be enough going on. Things that roll along in council, anyone that's been on council for a long time knows that the contracts come, contracts go. Councillors come in, councillors go out. CEOs come in, CEOs goes out, and so do these staff. We have changeover of staff, and things just move in the same direction because we know it's the right direction to take. So I've got no hesitation about this. I don't need to justify who, when, why, and what. I know who's in this particular contract, who needs to be voted in this position. But I'll leave it up to the councillors to vote in the normal way. And if it doesn't come, if we don't get the vote through, well, okay, then we'll go back to delaying it a bit further, and we'll do that line. But I'll be happy to put it into the ring of my fellow councillors to see where that goes, because it's up to us councillors. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I won't this time, because we've allowed a couple of more out of the process. And the debate was closed. General, yes. Anyway, we'll go to a vote before this continues on. It can continue on afterwards anyway, in a respectful way, that is. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declared carried. We will move on to notices of motion, in particular notices of motion. Sorry? Oh, no, sorry. I've got to go back. Yep. Notice of motion 1040 lodged by Councillor Brett Owen. Sorry about that, Councillor Owen. I've caught you off guard.
So the notice motion, is it?
Yep.
Okay. I move the following. Motion 1040 in my name, that Council 1 commence a review of the Cardinia Shire's Recreation Reserve Facility Standards Policy, which was last adopted in 2012. And 2, in light of the Chief Executive Officer's recent decision to amend the project brief for various recreational projects which differed from the current Recreation Reserve Facility Standards Policy, the Council review its financial contribution to future proposed recreational projects, including the Officer Recreation Reserve's Joint Use Community Function Room.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have a seconder to support that motion, please? Seconder, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Back to the mover to speak. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Springfield, for at the very least giving me an opportunity to speak to the notice of motion. Thank you. On Wednesday, I lodged this motion as per the rules. 1.5 weeks earlier, councillors were advised of changes made to the project brief of various recreational projects. The CEO advised council that he made a decision to do this, and the CEO's decision...
That's incorrect.
Can I finish, please?
Well, I'm going to incorrect...
Okay.
I didn't say that. I want to correct you before you go on.
Okay, so the CEO's got a point of order.
Projects back to council. I advised council what I did, and I asked council if they were satisfied with the changes, and the council agreed that the
Point of order, that's what I was about to say, Mr Mayor. I was about to say it was reaffirmed by the council. I was finishing my sentence.
We'll go back
Excuse
to the
me,
finish.
Mr Mayor, I was finishing my sentence. In my notes, if the CEO would like to see my notes, the CEO stated that he made a decision, which the decision was reaffirmed by councillors in that briefing. At this time, I expressed concern and the need for more clarity. The need that we need to update the policy because, you know, to have a moving feast for projects that wasn't in line with the policy, I was concerned. In my motion, I'm asking for a review of other projects, including the Officer Rec Reserve, the 90-metre square social space, joint use pavilion, which council measly $150,000. Everyone is truly aware of my support of this project. This was one of my council aspirations when I got elected in 2016. Some councillors' aspirations have been achieved. Not all councillors' aspirations have been achieved thus far. You know, as an elected representative, I would like to see this project get up. Last Thursday, all councillors received an email from the CEO where the CEO detailed some background information. He stated 90 square metres, 150,000 allocation is adequate considering another pavilion can be utilised. There is no financial advantage if council was successful in obtaining government funding. There are more worthy and financial advantageous projects such as a soccer pavilion at McMullen Road, library, youth centre and officer. I was disappointed with these comments, and I sort of wanted to try and convince councillors that we need to review our allocation for officer. The existing social space that the CEO referred to is over 40 years old or close to 40 years old. It was built in the early 1980s, mainly with volunteer labour, but does no longer meet today's standards. There is no disabled toilet in no social space. The project, it's fair to say, has strong support by our elected representatives, state and federal. There's already a $500,000 allocation from Mr. Jason Wood, member for Latrobe. There's the Rec Reserve is also meeting with upcoming candidates for the upcoming state election. They're doing very hard. They're doing a lot of work to make this project a reality. They are forking out $200,000 of their own money towards this project from various clubs within that use the Rec Reserve. They've got a Pick My Project bid, grant application of $200,000. There are, when you look at the grant application, sorry, the Pick My Project page, there's 78 comments supporting this facility, and I don't want to take too long, but I just wanted to note that this project is well supported by the officer and wider community. Some of these comments are a much needed project at the Officer Rec Reserve for all of the sports and community groups that use the place. Long overdue upgrade for a growing area. These facilities are well overdue for Officer. Much needed facility for children. These facilities are overdue for the Officer community. Let's not fall behind other local clubs any longer. Awesome club, very community orientated and hardworking, great asset for the community. Please support this project for our fast growing and family orientated community, a place where everyone can come together and share these awesome facilities. The current facilities serve well in its day, but since the rapid growth in the area with thousands of new residents moving in, the facility is in urgent need of an upgrade. There is strong support for this project. I do not believe the $150,000 in council's budget to make this project happen is adequate. All I'm asking is for a review of council's allocation. That's in my motion. There is a number of grant applications that council can apply. We've got Building Better Regions grant funding rounds approaching. We've got the member for Latrobe encouraging council to apply. This is a worthwhile project. Too often we see older recreational reserves forgotten. We've got concerns about Tumark Reserve. This is an older rec reserve. We're only offering $150,000 for this project, for this new community hub. And it's not only going to be used by football, cricket. There is many other users that can use this facility, officer-wide, schools, the officer tennis club that's at the Rec Reserve. We've got probers clubs. In the proposal presented to council, that's all detailed. So this joint community hub is not a social space only for the sporting clubs. This has wider community benefits. All I'm asking council is to review its allocation. I'm concerned this project will fall over. There's $500,000 from the federal government. If it doesn't get spent, that money's lost. All I'm asking council is to review its allocation to try and get this project up. I understand, we can, if we want the club to run the project, I think the maximum amount we can give is $200,000 for capital works project. At the very least, we should extend to that. So my motion is to review the policy and review council's proposed allocations for similar projects like officer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. A seconder to speak, Councillor Jeff Springfield. Thank you, Councillor Springfield.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Owen for his impassioned words. I'm going to try and take a moment to take a little bit of impassionment out of this room tonight, because there's been a lot of impassionment going on, a lot of energy flowing across, and I'm here to see business done as best as we can see it fit done. So I support this motion because I support that we should review the Recreation Reserve Facility Standards Policy, which was last adopted in 2012. And I would like to go on public record that in our conversations today, council officers all supported that we will do that in due course in the at the start of next year, when it seems timely and feasible for us to get around to it, across the workload that the sports and recreations facilities teams have in front of them. So, so respectfully, we are on the same page. Looking forward to that. I believe when this comes about, that we will, in that moment, review our financial contributions to our let me see the section for to the recreation facilities for the recreational spaces and the we're talking about. And Officer Recreational Reserve will come up within that, and we can review that when we have our policy review come about. I'm supportive of Officer Recreation Reserve, meeting its full potential. It is in my electorate. It is right around the corner, just down there. But I'm not going to come out here at this moment trying to suggest that we have done anything wrong in the past against Officer Recreation Reserve. I don't feel there is, in my mind, there is evidence of that. I am very happy for us to review our processes and to review the decisions of how we came to our focus on that project at this point of time, and I look forward to seeing what comes back. But I'd like to reiterate from some earlier conversations that the nominal amount, which seems $150,000, doesn't seem like a large amount compared to some of our other projects, but it was noted that we have a threshold that we can't go over unless we want to take over the project ourselves, and that wasn't deemed the appropriate way forward. And so so at some point in time, and can I ask, please, through you, Mayor, to the CEO, how long ago when was the date that we offered the $150,000 that currently sits with that project?
Thanks, Councillor Springfield. It would have been once we had notification from the federal government of the $500,000 grant. That would have been in probably 2016, might have been early 2017. And then Council's contribution of $50,000. I'd just also like to point out the Council's policy, which I set out in that email the other day. The Council's current policy regarding the Officer Rec Reserve is clear about where the social space will go and who will be responsible for any other social space. Now, that needs to be amended, but it's clear that's the current policy. So any of my officers can't act at all, because that's the policy of the council at the moment. Set out in the memo I sent out last week. We've given $150,000, and that would have happened in about, I think, 2017. Might have gone into the 2000s. Yeah, I think it went into 2016, 2017 budget.
Thank you, Mr. McQuillan. And I'll note again, this is, once we go over a certain threshold, we have to take over responsibility of the project, which then takes it out of the hands of, of the actual recreation group that could manage their own project, which is what they're looking for as the outcome they're trying to achieve here. I just would like to also note, we mentioned grants and us supporting them for grant funding. We are sitting in this a tight budgeted space moving forward into the future, and my understanding is that we have priorities on other projects which we've already committed to the millions of dollars towards these projects that we would like to, or our executive officers feel are more warranted, because if those projects get the grant allocation first, that then frees up money we already have focused on that we can then pass on. Now, I'm not saying that one project is more worthy for its development than the other project. It's just the transition of time that we've got to is that we've already committed money to these projects that we would hopefully see get grant funding first. That would free this money up to perhaps go towards something else. And can I ask again, Ms. McQuillan, am I correct in my assumption of that?
That's correct. That's the philosophy that Council have been working on. That's why we started to establish the Supplementary Capital Works program. So if we get funding, a grant funding from either the federal or state government, that releases our money, and that then go on to other projects. That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Quillen. So, and thank you, Mayor. I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Springfield. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Councillor Schilling. Thank you, Councillor Schilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak just so I can give some context. And look, first of all, thank you, Councillor Owen, for moving this. And I don't think anyone can ever doubt your passion for the officer community. And, well, I shouldn't just say the officer community, your ward in general. You've always been a strong advocate for the time for your constituents, and that shows through and through in everything that you do. I've taken the time, I've looked at the master plan, the business case put forward from the reserve, and also looked at some of the current funding arrangements as well. And look, I do specifically quote Officer Rec Reserve only because it is the reserve that's listed in the notice of motion. I'm quite happy, 100% behind the first part of the motion. I do think that we need to review our facilities policy, and the reason being is we have an ever-changing community here, don't we, with ever-changing needs, and budgets are getting tighter across all service provisions. So we do need to make sure that we are sharing facilities into the future. Once again, I'm also happy to have individual conversations about contributions to individual reserves, or any group within the community that require extra funding. The second part of the motion I won't be able to support, only because I'm really concerned about the impact that this could have on the broader capital works budget if we were to review. Because look, across the Shire, and if I'm putting my whole of Cardinia Shire hat on, I can think of projects within Central Ward, for instance, that I won't specifically name it, of people that are looking for an upgraded facility as well, and have put plans and visions forward. And I feel that this has to probably be done in a systematic, quite a broad process. So I'm very happy to still review at the Council of Budget Workshop in November and look at the priority list for our reserves. Once again, completely support the first part of the motion, but not the second. But I just wanted to be able to put that on the record and just give you some of my thoughts behind that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Schilling. Do I have any other speakers either for or against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Brown.
What happens if somebody supports the first part of the motion and not the second part?
It's actually together at the moment.
I'm assuming if some councillors are in agreement with the notice of motion, they'll vote for the notice of motion. If they only agree with part of it, they will vote against the motion, and then split it out and someone will then move the first part of the motion. So the policy is reviewed, and then any consideration of funding for projects would be considered following the adoption of a new policy by council.
No.
Well, you either vote for the motion
but thank you for explaining it to
me. Ultimately, at the moment, it is sitting there as a motion that contains the two parts to it. So when you vote on it, you're voting on the two parts. The only way you could possibly split it without knocking something back and then putting it up again exactly the same, it would have to change, because you can only put it up once every 3 months. So either someone would split the motion in two, so then you'd vote on two different motions, but that would have to be agreed upon Councillor Owen, because he's moved the motions. He's the only one who has the capacity to do that. And the seconder would have to agree to that. But if they want it to be moved as one, it gets moved as one. So it either gets knocked back in its totality or it gets accepted in its totality. Sometimes people split them. Yes?
It's not exactly correct. That's a rescission motion. If Councillor Owen wishes to, we can separate this motion then.
The only thing I'll say is if the motion goes down, we've already indicated that we're going to review the policy. We'll commence that in January, in the first quarter of next year. That process will take about 6 months. We've already indicated that earlier in a briefing this evening. Irrespective of whether this motion, if this motion is defeated, we'll still proceed to review the policy as I outlined last week at a briefing session of council and in the email I sent out last week.
Is there any other speakers either for or against?
Haven't finished.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
This motion really only calls for a review, and the review is going to happen. So, because it's going to be a review, and the review can be knocked on the head, the recommendations that come from the review can be discussed, decided upon. This is not locking, my understanding of it, it's not locking us into a change of the, what's the right word I'm looking for, anything towards the Officer Recreation Reserve. It's a review of, both questions are asking for a review.
Yep.
I can read what some of the councillors have indicated. They don't want to make a decision on part 2 until the review is completed.
Of part 1?
Part 1, yes. I think that's what people are saying. Well, you're going to allocate money based around a policy that's going to be reviewed. Goes back to the argument about Main Street. We haven't got a policy in place, so why are we making the decision?
Anyway, are there any other speakers either for or against? I'll just go through what I sort of had partly what people spoke about here. The fact that there is going to be a review starting in the next quarter of next year, so that would commence at the start of January. It does take between 4 and 6 months, because when you take out a new policy review, you need to go to all the user groups to get their information on what they think about things so they can weigh into it as well. So that needs to be taken into consideration. So the first part of it is basically we were going to go over the recreational reserves facilities policy. That's going to happen. And in the second half of it, it actually talks about, if you sort of read through, that council review its financial contribution to future proposed recreational projects, saying all the council projects, and then it says, and including the Officer Rec Reserve. So meaning all of those projects, all of them would take it into account. I must say it was highlighted to us at a briefing earlier that the team of 4 in the Recreational Reserve committee have at present got 64 projects which are in progress at the moment, some on the timeline further, some early on. So there's 64 projects in the sporting area underway over the whole Shire. And in the pipeline, there's 114 projects on top of those ones in line waiting. Now, with the review, that will go into looking at the different policy, but some of the implications will be of all those projects. If we expand, for one, the community space, community function space area wider and bigger, they all will be able to ask for the same thing. So that's where some people brought up there will be financial contributions to this, because projects that could look like they could be, say, $1.5 million could blow out to $2 million, all of them, because it's everyone's got to be fair on this, unless people put in money themselves. But I must say, on the first review, I must say I do support that. That was going to happen anyway, because things have changed over time. Sporting things that were around 20 years ago have changed very much so now, because we've got so many more women in sport, which is fabulous, and they need to use facilities too. So that's a very good thing. And the second one is, during the review, we will be looking at all those spaces, like the joint community space function room, because that is something that has now come into effect a bit more. So anyway, I will go back to the mover to sum up, unless somebody else has got something to say in relation to this matter. If no one else has got any more, I'll go back to the mover to sum up. Thank you, Councillor Brett Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. As the motion says, it's reviewing the current policy and reviewing the allocations. Officer will grow to 30,000 people. This is the original existing rec reserve in Officer, and a measly 150,000 towards a joint community facility use, which will have possible users of the Officer and District Township Committee, Officer Progress Association, West Gippsland Cricket Association, possibly Outlook and Mecwa, Meals on Wheels can use our commercial kitchen facility, local Rotary clubs, weekly meetings that can include a catered dinner, local Lions clubs, Probus and Make-A-Wish, local schools. There's many schools in Officer. There's a strong support for this project. We talk about a policy that was renewed in 2012. The policy that in the CEO's email says the new community pavilion will be designed in accordance with the Council's Recreation Reserve Facility Standards Policy in capital letters, with the ability for expansion at the cost of user groups to incorporate a large, flexible function space that could be available for community and club functions and events. 2012. I'm advised that the Rec Reserve has never endorsed this adopted master plan. And it's fair to say there's been a lot of alterations to that plan since 2012 and timelines blown out. So just sticking to the letter of the law just for that element I find is interesting. There is strong support from the federal government. There's $500,000. That can be lost if this project doesn't get up. This fixation that we need to apply for other grants. We may not get that, especially if the local member doesn't support their preferences for this project. And what's wrong with, okay, if we put in for other grants, let's have a reconsideration of the council's allocation in the Supplementary Capital Works program to get this project over the line. Let's have that conversation. Okay, we'll apply for these other projects, hoping that we're going to get some money that will free up some cash. Let's try and get this project over the line. Let's find the missing gap to 1.2 and let the Rec Reserve do the project. Or if not, fund the full project. 800, I've advised 800 young people, mainly young people, participate at the Rec Reserve. Yes, they've got Heather Bray. It's that capacity. In the email that we got during the week, it says the junior club has relocated to Heather Bray. That is not correct. They heavily use that Rec Reserve. The existing social space...
Excuse me, but I think point of order.
We were advised last week by the football club that there's only 4 users of the 2 ovals. Because we're putting in an application for the female facilities, and the only mention of football was 3 senior men's team and 1 women's team. There was no mention of juniors playing at the Office of Recreation there. So that's why that comment was made in the email, because that's what we were told.
All I know, Mr Mayor, is that this reserve is heavily used. The existing social space is not adequate. No disabled toilet. We're proposing a upgrade, female-friendly upgrade of the old change rooms. I think that project cost may have been, valued at a lot more money than what we budgeted for. So why not reconsider the whole project, what we're doing in that space? All right, let's reconsider it. I'm just asking for a review. 150,000 is not enough. People are a bit sick and tired of some older facilities around our Shire not being improved, upgraded. We've got similar sort of concerns at Tumut Reserve. And when people see Commonly Banks, many millions of dollars, Lang Lang, many millions of dollars, all we want is some of these older facilities upgraded. I think it's just fair. So, councillors, I seek your support. Yes, it is very obvious I support this project over many years. I acknowledge the great work the Rec Reserve Committee is trying to do to get this project up. They've not just got the hand out. They are advocating very strongly. Look at Pick My Project. They're doing so much work to get some additional money. They're speaking with their local MPs to get election promises. let's get this project over the line. And all I'm asking for council is let's try and work with the Rec Reserve to get this project over the line. If we need to find a little bit more extra money, let's do it. Thank you.
I'm just going to highlight again the motion that we're voting on at this point. It's actually about the review of the recreational reserve facilities standards policy, which is going to happen in the first quarter of the year, and the second one, in light of that review, we will review the financial contribution to future proposed recreational projects, and that includes, naturally, that would be the Officer Rec Reserve as well, as Brett's pointed out. So that is the motion at hand. We'll go to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Declared carried. That concludes the discussion of items withdrawn. Can I have a motion, please, to adopt the recommendations for the balance of the listed items? Councillor Graham Moore, seconder. Councillor Jodie Owen. All those in favour? Unanimously carried. We've got reports or minutes of committees. I noted that several reports from various committees have been tabled in addition to the minutes of the recent council briefing sessions, and these are available if any councillors wish to view them. Councillors, do I have any reports or things that you would like to report on? Councillor Carol Ryan. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. Just to put a little bit of light on tonight, just a little bit of interaction that I've had within the community. It's always, I've been advised by some residents that they enjoy listening to our input and what we do within our community, and I think that's really great feedback because we're all very active within our community. We all do different things, and sometimes we all turn up at the same thing, so which is great because it shows support for all the organisations within our Cardinia Shire. One of the events I went to was the Senior Citizens AGM, and Mayor Colin Ross was there, and it was great to see so many awards being given out.
What a Councillor Ryan.
Sorry.
Councillor Schilling was there too.
Councillor Schilling, I do apologise, Councillor Schilling. You were sitting right next to me, weren't you? No, that was the op shop one. It was the op shop one, wasn't it? It was one of them. No, I think it was the op shop one, where we were giving out, they were giving out donations, weren't they? Yeah. Whereas at the Senior Citizens, where they were giving out memberships, lifelong memberships. And always great to be there, always great to have feedback. I always go there with my writing pad because there's always something I'll come back and query something at council. I also attended the Millhaven Lodge AGM. Again, Mayor Councillor Ross was there, and Councillor Graham Moore was there. Always look forward to going there and seeing the services that they put in place and how much support they get within their community, and hopefully the building with extensions and getting more people within the vacant building at the moment. So hopefully we can get some more partnerships happening within our community. I went for a travel on Vic Rail with some seniors just to experience more the travelling on the train. It was quite adventurous, looking out the window at things you don't normally see when you're driving around your community. So it was really great to see some of the grounds that are growing, the housing that's growing, all the things that we've put in within infrastructure, and it was it made you feel proud to be part of that and say, you know, look, this is how far it's growing, and the community is going to do really, really well with the growth. So it was a bit exciting coming back on the train too. So bit of a novelty, I must say. Pakenham Op Shop AGM, yes, Councillor Schilling and the Mayor was there as well, and some of the donations, they raise a lot of money at the Op Shop, Pakenham Op Shop, and the donations they give out to the Fire Brigade, the Scouts, lots and lots of organisations. I could name an awful lot, but I don't really want to leave anyone out, so I'm best if I just leave that. I've also been working with the Salvation Army with homeless people and finding out some of their stories and helping them, and organising hairdressers to come out and cut their hair for nothing, and that took a bit of negotiation with hairdressers, so but it's working, and so I'm looking forward to still working with the Salvation Army and getting some more programs up and running. Went to James Bath Reserve and to check out the development, and again the Mayor was there, so we seem to be travelling around quite a bit, and just to see the progress there, absolutely wonderful. So really proud of that ground and the development and how it will eventuate. Went to the Student Leaders Conference with Councillor Schilling and Councillor Wilmot, and absolutely wonderful. I think I missed Councillor Graham Moore. You'd just gone as I came in. Lots and lots of talent. The debate was fantastic. The music talent was absolutely brilliant. I believe Councillor Schilling went out and played a bit of football, and Councillor Wilmot as well, which I wasn't that adventurous. But, look, it's great to see such creative children within our community, and there was around about 100 children, I believe, from all different primary schools. And the staff through the Cardinia Shire did an absolutely wonderful job as a team effort. So they're my travels over the last month, and so I'll look forward to giving you some more rundowns of some new adventures during the next month. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Do I have any other speakers who would like to put in any council reports? Councillor Brett Owen. Thank you, Councillor Owen.
Just thank you, Mayor. Just want to advise, I know that a number of councillors in recent months have had conversations with upcoming candidates for the state election, and I think it's really good that councillors are, and I know the Mayor has a significant role in this advocacy, but really making the candidates aware of what projects we are keen to see get up. We only get this opportunity at the state level once every 4 years. So I know a number of councillors are speaking to candidates from across the board, raising their awareness of matters that, or issues and projects that matter to our Shire. So well done, councillors, for that. On the 31st, Friday the 31st of August, Councillor Letitia Wilmot and myself attended a couple of events in Beaconsfield. The opening of the Bowman's Track sign, and that's on the corner of Janet Bowman Boulevard and O'Neill Road. Janet Bowman was an amazing lady. She was a publican at the Beaconsfield Hotel. She constructed, or her efforts constructed, and she paid for a track between Beaconsfield to the Jordan Goldfields in the Yarra Valley back in 1862. She paid for that project, and it had some wide-reaching benefits for the area, and she only got compensated a quarter of that amount in 1870s, I believe. But this was a project that the Beaconsfield Progress Association was really passionate about. Reintroduced these signage, wayward signage. It's an ongoing project, so it was great to help launch that. Congratulations to many council staff that have worked with the BPA to get that project up and running. So well done. And also on that day, we saw the launch of the digital memorial. So it's like a digital kiosk at the Beaconsfield Community Centre, another project run by the BPA. They received a federal government grant, and it's got the history of the many men and women who fought for our country over the years over various wars. So well done to the BPA. Thank you to the federal government for their support of that. But it's in the foyer of the Beaconsfield Community Complex. If you get a chance, have a look at it. It's great. It's going to be a really great learning tool, particularly for young people. You know, it's very interactive, particularly for, you know, modern times. You know, people can press on the display and photos come up, and it's really, really modern. So it's really a great way to acknowledge our history. On Saturday, the 1st of September 2018, I attended a City of Casey event in conjunction with the various historical societies, put on a Shire of Berwick celebration of 150 years. And we all know Cardinia Shire, you know, is part of that history. It was at Pioneer Park in Berwick, so it was a great way to acknowledge our history, which Cardinia Shire is proud to be involved in that. So well done, City of Casey. It's great that we are having these events in the 150th year. We need to acknowledge our history and the people who've gone before us. Very important. We can't forget those. And finally, I attended the Gembrook Quilting Show. Sorry, the Everything Patchwork and Quilting in Gembrook. Amazing annual event. They raise approximately almost $5,000 for the Gembrook CFA each year. So well done to those, and it was great to attend and draw the raffle, which I didn't win. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Do I have any other speakers? Councillor Graham Moore. Thank you, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of items. I attended the opening of Bruce Clough's Garage Road. This has been going along for about 10 years, this road opening, the one to Bunyip. You would know the garage in Narnagoon. It's been going on for about 10 years. And they actually, the Clough boys, paid for the actual road to be instigated out that exit go to Bunyip. So if you go to that garage, you can go straight to Bunyip out of the garage. I wanted to thank the CEO for his input and Mr. Mike Ellis as well for their helping hand. And of course, the member for Narrabeen, Gary Blackwood, had a lot to do with the instigating and getting this road eventually opened. Yes, I've been to a few events with a few of the councillors the other day. One special event was I did represent the mayor. One the mayor wasn't at, which was the football team called the Cardinia Tigers. Now you might know who the Cardinia Tigers are, but they are the players for the residents who are at the Windana Drug and Rehabilitation Centre, which is in Merrinol, in our ward area, and they've got a fantastic football team who are all inclusive. Right across the board, so what a great group of people to go and present their trophies and celebrate their first year of having a football team. They didn't win any games, but they just had a great time. And what a great thing to do with the Victorian Police, working with them, playing with them. They were coaching them as well, interacting with these wonderful people who are on their way to recovery, and this is part of the recovery program. So it's great to have it in our ward, in our Port Ward area, the Windana Drug Recovery Centre, which got a lot of, I know it was, everyone was against it when it started, and I haven't heard a beep from it, and it's such a thing to, wonderful thing to have in Cardinia Shire. So that was a really great thing to go and represent the mayor on that day. And we had the breakfast, the Casey Cardinia breakfast the other morning, and Brendan Gale was the speaker, and what a great speaker he was. Our own Andrew Pomeroy interviewed him actually on the day, and it was a really great, what a great interview. It was really inspiring to hear Brendan Gale, what he had to say on that breakfast. So they're really great things to attend. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Do I have any other speakers who would like to put in any reports? Councillor Tisha Wilmot. Thank you, Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I've attended a few of those events too, and I won't go over them all. But I wanted to give you all an update on the new tourism board, the Casey Cardinia Tourism Board. It's official. The paperwork has been successfully lodged, and we are now a incorporated association. The members on this new board, we have as our chairperson, Cathy Mann, who is the centre manager for Fountain Gate Shopping Centre. Chris Russell is her vice president or vice chair. Chris has been on our advisory committee for the last 4 years and has continued on the board, and he is the general manager of the Cranbourne Royal Botanical Gardens. We have Christina Burke, who is from CPR Issues Government Media. She is our secretary. We have Mark Juvelet, who is from Puffing Billy Railway, and he is our treasurer. We also have Michael Johnson from Moonlit Sanctuary, who has been on the advisory committee right from the very start and has continued onto the board. We have Adam Khan, who you would all be familiar with from Khan's Hospitality Services. We have Richard Sherman, which most of you would also know, from the Star News Group. And we have Robin O'Halloran from Sterling Travel, as well as Councillor Amanda Stapleton and myself representing the two councils involved. Unfortunately, we've had one board member already retire. We're only just starting, and unfortunately, David Thompson, who was from Gone By a World, had to retire his position on the board as he's moved interstate for work. So we're in the process of recruiting a new board member, and that hopefully will be in place before our first official board meeting next Wednesday. To date, we've had a couple of casual meetings, and last week we started doing some team building exercises so that we get to know each other a little bit better at a much quicker pace. We'll be having monthly meetings, and it's important with all the work that needs to be done in this sector that we get up and running and working as a well-functioning team right from the word go. So we've got another one of those team building exercises planned for October, and if it's as good as the first one, I'll be really pleased because the first one was great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. Do I have any other speakers who would like to present any reports? If not, I'll just say a few words. It was mentioned about how important it is in relation at an election time to talk to all people who can give us some help and ratepayers' help towards things. I must say, Interface Week, I attended out of the possible, I think there was 8 or 9 sessions. I attended 6 of them with all sides of the political parties in relation to trying to put forward what the needs are in Cardinia Shire. I must say, I even attended one last week with the Interface group where Matthew Guy was the main person who was there, and he didn't have any papers on the information we were giving him, so I just happened to give him my papers with all the highlighted things about Cardinia Shire inside it. And I said, unashamedly, you can see the wonderful things that the Growing Suburbs Fund has contributed to in our Shire. So the Growing Suburbs Fund also too, I contributed by, when I went up to the National Awards for Local Government for the Together We Can program, and we won the first prize for prevention and community safety over the results there. I had the opportunity to talk to, and mind you, that was paid by the awards to go up there, so I didn't actually, ratepayers didn't have to forget 1 cent. They paid for us to go up. I must say that I expressed to the federal political parties that basically councils deal in millions of dollars, the state government deals in hundreds of millions of dollars, and the federal government deals in billions of dollars. And I let them know that Cardinia Shire and Casey have already got together almost the same population as Tasmania. It's got 100,000 more than Canberra. And if you look at the interface councils in Victoria alone, the 10 councils around the ring, of the population increase in Australia every day, which is quite large, Victoria has 50% of it, and the interface councils have 50% of everything that comes into Victoria. So the need is really big, and I lobbied to get a Growing Suburbs Fund in the interface councils from a federal level, where we get $50 million off the state government, but $50 million to the feds isn't all that much, and it really does impact community groups. Also too, I attended with Councillor Moore and the ex-councillors George Blenkhorn and David Young, the National Farmers Federation annual dinner and awards, and that was great. There was a couple of people who received awards there for outstanding long-term service to the farming group. Also too, on the night, my calendar said that it was from 6:30 till 9. I just happened to have my I still play Super Rules football, which is AFL football for those over 35 years of age. I play for Beaconsfield. Our local MP calls it Super Fools football. But it's actually like a men's shed for blokes that just want to play as they get older. On the night while I was attending, it just happened to finish at 10 to 11 at Nunagoon, and I was meant to be at there before 11. For this year, I actually won the third best and fairest in the team, which I never usually win, so a few guys must have played less games. I also played 150 games, and I became a life member of the club, which to play 150 games of Super Rules, it's the equivalent, because you only play 9 to 11 games a year. So it's actually over 300 games, and you played all of those. I played all of those over 37 years of age. So it was an unbelievable honour to join the guys in the club as a life member of the club. So I must say, for anyone out there who gets a bit older, I played bowls the other day with the Pakenham Bowls Club. I must say, I've always found bowls when I was watching it. With Jason Woods, we both played down there, so we were down there. They were lobbying us to see what they could manage to get to contribute to their facility. I must say, bowls, for anyone who hasn't actually played bowls, it is a really fun thing to play. It is, and one story really inspired me. There was a guy that was playing pokies. He'd just retired with his wife across the way, and a guy from the bowls club walked through, and he said, "Look, I'm a coach of the bowls club over here." He said, "You interested in coming and having a few bowls?" And he thought, "Oh, geez, I can't be interested in bowls." He thought, anyway, to humour the bloke, he went over to have a game. Well, he's been over there for 7 years, and he absolutely loves the club. He loves being part of it. He said the social side, the game side, and he said he doesn't know what he'd do with his retirement, and it wasn't looking real good sitting in front of a poker machine. So, and their club has actually grown. So I say to people who think exercising as you get older is a bit of a fool's game, I think they're a bit of a fool for saying it, to be honest, because, you know, the fitter you can be and the more well-being you can do, and that goes through to your children and to other people who watch you do it too. They like to see you try and keep fit. So anyway, that's some of the stuff I've been doing. And I usually don't give reports because I just have a myriad of end. But anyway, if there's no more councillor reports, we'll move on to the presentation of petitions. Is there any petitions to present? If not, we will move on to community question time. We've received a question from Mr. Tony O'Hara. Mr. O'Hara cannot be with us this evening. Hi there, Tony. But he is an interested viewer watching us on TV from Tasmania. So I'll refer Mr. O'Hara's question to the Manager of Governance, Mr. Doug Evans, to answer. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We usually require persons to be in attendance in the gallery for questions to be answered, but I suppose Mr. O'Hara is sort of in attendance if he's there with us. G'day, Tony. Tony's question reads, if you bear with me just one moment. Mr. O'Hara's question reads, I would like my question answered in the council meeting as I plan to watch the webcast. In relation to the stopping supplementary questions during community question times, many times I have heard answers that do not really respond to the questions asked, and a supplementary question is the only way to extract a proper response. Why can you not suspend the broadcast during the supplementary questions if council is so concerned? So to answer Mr. O'Hara's questions, that certainly is a legitimate suggestion, Mr. O'Hara. The process that the council will be going through, and you may have heard in the debate earlier in the evening with Councillor Letitia's motion, we will be seeking community input into the draft amending local law structured around the supplementary questions, and we do encourage as many people as possible to give us their comments, including Mr. O'Hara, in regard to how we might be able to structure supplementary questions in a more open fashion. So I would encourage Mr. O'Hara to give us his suggestion as a formal submission in response to the local law when we seek community feedback on that.
Thank you, Mr. Evans, and that response will be given in writing too to Mr. O'Hara, and he has the opportunity to talk to Mr. Evans at another time in relation to that matter. Next, we have received a series of 10 questions from Mrs. Lynn Williams. Is Miss Williams in the gallery? Thank you. I'll refer the questions to the Manager for Governance and Mr. Evans, and he'll read them and answer them for you, so you don't need to read them out. That's all right. We just ask if you're here, because generally if the person isn't here, we still give them a written response, but we just don't read it out at the meeting. So,
all right, I'll go through these questions in order. Councillors are elected to protect and represent ratepayers. My rates have increased by 72%, despite the average increase being 18.48%. Do you think this is fair and reasonable increase? To answer the first question, Ms Williams, Council has no control over the rates paid for individual properties. Council sets the rate in the dollar that is applied across all properties, based on the valuation. I agree, a 72% increase is a very large increase. However, this is indicative of the increased valuation of properties in the Glisman Road area. Ms Williams' second question reads, the state government has capped rate revenue increase by 2.25%. Would Council consider capping excessive rate increases to ratepayers? To answer that question, there is no provision within the Local Government Act to allow Council to restrict the percentage increase in rates for individual properties. They are set as a whole. Question 3. It is legislated that ratepayers have the right to object and request a review of their property valuation. However, I've already been told that the Valuer General has approved the new valuations and that there will be no change. Shouldn't we have the opportunity to object before the valuations are locked in? The answer, Ms Williams, valuations of all properties within the Shire are returned by qualified valuers, and these valuations are required to be approved by the Valuer General prior to being used for rating purposes by the Council. I agree that this seems to restrict the potential for owners to object to their valuation, but this is the valuation system existing in Victoria at this time. I might add that the state government has now legislated to make the Valuer General solely responsible for the revaluation of properties, and the Council will no longer have a part to play in this process. Question 4. Our rate notice states that a valuation is an assessment of the amount of property would sell for on a particular date, in this case 1 January 2018. Why then was a property in our street, which sold in February 2018, used as a comparative sale to determine property valuations? To answer that question, for the current revaluation, with the effective date of 1 January this year, Council was required to have the valuations lodged with the Valuer General in March this year, and sales within 30 days of this date were required to be taken into account. Council had no option. Question number 5 reads, what is the formula used to calculate a property's valuation? All I can suggest to you, I'm not a valuer, Ms Williams, all I can suggest to you is that the process to calculate property valuations is laid out in the Valuation of Land Act and is controlled by valuation best practice guidelines that are established by the Valuer General. Question 6. Council states that the current rate hike is due to the rising infrastructure costs. Isn't it true that developers are liable for most of the infrastructure costs? With reference to Glisman Road development, we have been informed that we must pay for all infrastructure costs, including traffic signals, at the intersection of Glisman Road and the Old Princess Highway. To answer, I agree, it is correct that developers are required to pay for most of the infrastructure costs for new subdivisions. The Council, however, is still responsible for infrastructure in other parts of the Shire and for the costs associated with new developments where the developer is not required to contribute. Now, question 7. Property values in Glisman Road have been pushed up by speculative developers who are unaware of the related infrastructure costs. If the Glisman Road development plan is proven to be unworkable, rendering our properties to be unsaleable, could we expect a lower valuation, lower rates, and even some reimbursement of current rates? In answer to your question, speculative purchases of properties do affect the value of similar properties in close proximity. If the valuations of these properties reduces over time, then the rates payable by these properties also reduces commensurately. Question 8. My rates have increased by $2,000. I have my garbage collected weekly, hard rubbish biannually, my dirt road graded 2 to 3 times a year. What extra services can I expect to directly receive for this increased cost? The answer to that question, rates payable by individual properties are not a fee for service. All ratepayers have access to the wide range of council services available, whether they avail themselves of those services or not. Rates are a wealth tax based purely on the valuation of your property. Question 9. When Glisman Road is rezoned from rural living to residential, can we expect a further significant rate increase? The answer to that one, obviously this will depend on the valuations of the properties in Glisman Road. Final question, number 10. We feel council's objective is to price the residents of Glisman Road off their properties to enable future housing development. Is this correct? Pardon me, is this correct? And the answer is no. This is not the case. And as mentioned by the Mayor, Ms Williams, you will be receiving a detailed written response to those questions as well.
Thank you, Mr Evans. Next, we've received a question from Mr Henk Hiremans. Is Mr Hiremans in the gallery? Fantastic. Thank you for your question. And again, I'll refer this to Mr Evans, who will read out the question and answer it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The question from Mr Hiremans reads, I refer to property 1 to 3 Savage Street, Pakenham, application for 41-bedroom boarding house by Marjo Proprietary Limited. Marjo Proprietary Limited have cancelled and withdrawn their VCAT. Now what is the future of this vacant land? Will Marjo simply redraft another plan with a few alterations and resubmit to council and bypass our 9 speakers at VCAT and the 160 letters to council? We understand this has happened before. In answer to your question, Mr Hiremans, council is not aware of the current intentions of the owner of this property. If a development proposal is lodged that requires planning approval, this will be advertised as was the previous proposal. But at this stage, we don't know. We have no indication from the owner what his intentions are.
And that response will be given to you in detail. It'll be given in writing as well, the response from Mr Evans. Thank you, Mr Evans. Finally, we've received a series of questions from Mrs Gloria O'Connor. I see Mrs O'Connor in the gallery. I refer the questions to the CEO, Mr Gary McQuillan, to read them out and answer. Thank you, Mr McQuillan.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Question number 1, would you please advise why it was decided to lease or give away for $1 Bayville Council land at 6 to 10 Main Street, Pakenham, adjacent to the conserved historic council building and the surrounding Sid Earl Community Reserve? What are the appropriate dimensions of the land and what is the current value? What was the initial decision made concerning the future of the land? By whom was it initiated? Was any professional advice received regarding the future use and development of the site? Contrary to council stated information, the proposed changes to the site were not known to the general community other than several close residents in Snodgrass Street and Princess Highway by letterbox, as the requisite signage was no longer visible on the site after 3 days there. The local newspaper cannot be regarded as notification to all residents, as it is classified pages are not seen by all required. Can you please now provide a copy of the required notice? Council resolved in July this year to propose to lease the land at 6 to 10 Main Street. Public notice of this proposal seeking community input was undertaken and no submissions were received. You will note that this matter was considered earlier this evening, and I'm sure that the debate on that matter would have answered any question you may have. On a separate issue, the town planning application for the development was considered by the council at the August council meeting, and this was approved. The statutory advertising of this application was undertaken and 4 objections were received. The land is 3,960 square metres in area, and the most recent valuation values the land at $1.35 million. And we'll send out a copy of the notice with our response.
Thank you, Mr McQuillan.
Second question, can you please summarise the history of the land in Story Drive, Pakenham, currently in process for planning and development, as it details that are a matter of serious concern for local residents? Council resolved in April 2016 to give notice of its intention to sell the land at 20 Story Drive. Council considered the objections received to this and subsequently resolved in July 2016 to proceed with the sale of the land. The land is to be developed for social housing. Question 3. Would you please advise the current progress of community reserve owned land in Cumberland Drive, Pakenham, recently proposed to be offered for sale, and is sufficient notice available to surrounding and general residents? Council resolved at its meeting held on the 20th of August 2018 to commence the statutory procedures to sell or lease this parcel of land. Advertising of this proposal seeking community input is currently underway. Council will consider any submissions received regarding the proposal before making a decision whether to dispose of the land or lease the land.
Thank you, Mr McQuillan, and that will be given to you in writing as well, and all the answers that Mr McQuillan gave will be given in writing to you, so then you've got them in written form. And also too, the majority of the time people are here, the managers, to have a chat to if you want to about any of those answers. No, that's what we voted on earlier today because of we don't have any way of basically cutting out whatever statements people make or whatever. So that's why we put the motion through earlier. But people will have an opportunity later on to, when the local law comes up about taking away supplementary questions, to put in submissions in relation to your thoughts on it or the process. We will go now. Well, what we can do is afterwards, after the council meeting, Mr Evans will speak with you, be able to take custody of that petition, and then we can present it at the next council meeting because it wasn't presented before the meeting. What we'll do is we'll talk about it afterwards, otherwise we continue the dialogue anyway, so that defeats the purpose of not having supplementary questions because we've just continued anyway. We'll have to move on, but you can always put the questions that you've got into our next meeting anyway. Thank you. We will move on to councillor question time. And I believe we have one question from Councillor Brett Owen to the General Manager of Assets and Services, Mr Mike Ellis. Thank you, Mr Ellis.
Mr Mayor, can I just read the questions out first?
You can. No worries.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor. This question is to the General Manager of Assets and Services, Mr Mike Ellis. Can you please provide an update on the construction of Kenilworth Avenue in Beaconsfield? What is Council doing to resolve the contractual issues between the developer and contractor? What is Council doing to maintain Kenilworth Avenue and reduce the adverse impacts on residents during this prolonged contractual Dispute. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think I understood Councillor Owen's question, but as he's requested the, I guess the delays in relation to the completion of Kenilworth Avenue have really come about due to the contractual dispute between the financer of the works, being the developer and the contractor themselves. Council's been working hard to try and facilitate an outcome to get works underway as soon as possible, and have worked to set up trust accounts which will hold enough funds or assets so that the contractor is able to draw down on those trust accounts to pay for the works that are completed. We're just finalising that arrangement at the moment. There are other complexities associated with the contractual arrangements in that the contractor also works for the developer on adjoining estate works. So we have to try and work through those issues and gain some separation so that we can have the, I guess, the review and the arrangements solely focused on Kenilworth Avenue. So those negotiations are continuing, and we're very hopeful of a satisfactory outcome shortly. In respect to the maintenance of Kenilworth Avenue, we've just altered our traffic management plan to reduce the traffic speeds along that section of Kenilworth Avenue down to 40 kilometres an hour, and we'll be erecting local traffic only signs to try and discourage general through traffic, further deteriorating the road surface itself. We have at least annual inspections by our work surveillance staff, just checking on the condition of the road, and it's graded at a minimum of once every fortnight. But if the inspections indicate that it is deteriorating at a faster rate, then we program additional grading works. So we're certainly endeavouring to keep it to a satisfactory standard. The weather conditions haven't been that good to us in terms of trying to do that, but hopefully with the reduction in the vehicle speeds and the ongoing grading, the road will remain trafficable until the construction works are complete. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Before closing the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that this is Mr. Gary McQuillan's last council meeting as the CEO of the Shire. Although we will have the opportunity at another time to appropriately farewell Gary, I would like to have it recorded in the minutes of the meeting that we appreciate Gary's time and effort and as the CEO over the last 11 years. Well done, Gary, and good luck and good health with you and your wife, Julie, into your future endeavours. So thank you. And also, I believe Councillor Graham Moore asked whether or not he might be able to say something, and I'm sure that will be fine. Thank you.
No, this will be okay. This is very good. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Look, thanks, Gary, for all your efforts over these years that we've had here. We're going to have an official send-off. I just wish you and Julie well in the future. I believe you're going to take up golf. And right across West Australia, I believe, bike riding. So I'm looking forward to hearing and seeing the photos of that. So it's really good to see and enjoying your travel together overseas, as you always have done in the past. We're just going to extend that. So all the best, Gary, and I wish you and Julie well for the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. And if anyone else wanted to, although we will have our official function. Anyway, that concludes tonight's proceedings, and thank you for your attendance, and I declare the meeting closed.